Thank you for joining us today. Today we are going to talk about the dangers of CO, how to do a combustion analysis, and the products that are available on the market for you. Let's talk about what carbon monoxide is. Carbon monoxide is a tasteless, colorless, and odorless gas. It's a byproduct of incomplete combustion, and it can lead to long-term injury or death. But the thing about carbon monoxide is if you're not testing for it, you will never know if it is present. 50,000 people a year wind up going to the ER for accidental carbon monoxide poisoning, and that's 50,000 people that we know of. The estimates for that are actually 2 to 3 times as much. Out of those 50,000 people that we know wind up going to the emergency room for accidental carbon monoxide, about 430 of those people wind up dying. And what's a little bit more astounding is that only 27 states require that CO detectors be placed in new home construction. Only 5 states currently require CO detectors be placed in schools. And when we think about schools and we think about institutions, that is generally powered by very large boilers. So think about that. Only 5 states currently require CO detectors in schools. A few years ago, UEI Test Instruments partnered with the National Carbon Monoxide Awareness Association, and we will abbreviate that as the NCOAA. But the NCOAA was founded with a mission to help prevent all of these avoidable deaths. Last year, I had the pleasure of going to the second annual NCOAA Carbon Monoxide Awareness Summit. And during that time, I got to listen to a lot of different stories about the dangers of carbon monoxide. The thing with carbon monoxide are these are completely avoidable deaths. And the thing about carbon monoxide, we mentioned it's colorless, it's tasteless, and it's odorless. But carbon monoxide doesn't care who you are or where you're at. It could be your neighbor, it could be a celebrity, it could be a church, it can be just your average family. And according to a recent study by UL, 60% of homeowners think that the HVAC contractor is fully or mostly responsible for minimizing the risk of CO poisoning. And while carbon monoxide is tasteless, colorless, and odorless, there are some early warning signs that can manifest. Those signs can include slight headaches, nauseousness, vomiting, fatigue, or flu-like symptoms. And these are also not only warning signs if your customer tells you that they have these frequently. If you start experiencing them while you are inside a building, it's a good idea to get yourself out of there. With more continued exposure to carbon monoxide, you can get a throbbing headache, drowsiness, confusion, and it can even result in a fast heart rate or sometimes even mimic some of those heart attack symptoms. And with prolonged exposure to carbon monoxide, you can wind up with convulsions, unconsciousness, brain damage, and it can ultimately lead to death. So what are some of the limits of CO in the ambient air? If we look at 200 parts per million, that slight headache, fatigue, dizziness, and nauseousness will set in about 2 to 3 hours. As we continue down that chart, we can see when we get all the way down to 12,800 parts per million. At 12,800 parts per million, you risk death within 2 to 3 minutes. And I want you to remember that number, 12,800, because it's going to come up later in this presentation for you. So what are the safe levels of CO? Obviously, the goal is that we would prefer to have 0 parts per million in the ambient air. But it turns out that the safe levels depend on who we are talking to. According to the World Health Organization, or the WHO, they say that 4 parts per million is the limit in ambient air. ASHRAE, the governing body that we typically look for, says that it's at 9 parts per million. And if we consult our first responders, so our fire and EMTs, they're going to tell you at 35 parts per million that they are going to evacuate out an area and they are going to shut down any fuel-fired appliances. And then they're going to tell you, a homeowner, to call a qualified contractor to come check it out. And then, according to OSHA, A workplace can have up to 50 parts per million for up to 8 hours a day. And when we think about carbon monoxide doesn't leave your body instantaneously. So what they're basically saying is, yes, you can have an exposure for 8 hours. However, it is going to take your body at least 16 hours to be able to purge that out. And have you ever looked at the back of a CO home alarm? Well, the alarm requirements, most home CO detectors are rated to what we call the UL 2034 standard. And that UL 2034 standard is written very interestingly because according to that standard, a home CO alarm is not allowed to alarm until it has seen 70 parts per million sustained for 1 to 4 hours. So, if during that first hour it dips below that 70 parts per million, that timer starts all over again. So, it's important. Home CO detectors are very, very important to have, but it is also very important to know where their limitations are. Home CO alarms will save a life, but they may not protect somebody from long-term injury or illness. At UEI Test Instruments, we do offer an ambient air CO detector, our COA2. This COA2 is great because not only does it have audible alarms and visual alarms, it also interacts with an app that you can download for free, the CO2A app. It's available in the iOS and the Android store. But it will allow you to log, store, and record. You can graph any of your results. So if you were to walk into a facility, you would be able to detect if there was any ambient air CO. It also has preset alarms on it, and those preset alarms are set to match the standards that we were talking about. So at 0 parts per million, you're not going to see anything going on with your COA2. At 1 to 9 parts per million, you're going to see that the light is going to flash at you green. But from 10 to 34 parts per million, it's actually going to flash at you blue. And you remember at 35 parts per million, that's where first responders are going to be coming in and evacuating out a building. This is actually going to start flashing at you red, as well as the audible alarm will kick on for you. So we talked about what carbon monoxide is, but let's talk about some of the common sources, because it's also really important to identify the correct sources of CO within a building. So one of the number one reasons that home CO alarms go off actually has to do with auto exhaust. Auto exhaust accounts for about 60% of the reason those CO alarms go off. And if we think about it, the way that our houses are built, they're built very tight. We have attached garages to them. And when we start up a car, say it's wintertime, and we want to start our car, the proper way to do that is actually to open the garage door, turn the car on, and actually back it out, because carbon monoxide will build up and it will layer on top of each other, causing home CO alarms to go off. And if you haven't followed that, or maybe you didn't pull your car out close enough and something happens, like say maybe you realized you left your cell phone in the house and your car's running, all that CO's just building up in the garage space, you open the door to your house, what do you think winds up happening with all of that carbon monoxide that's been building up in the garage? It's going to get drafted and pulled right into the house. And the thing about auto exhaust is that cars can actually start at up to 12,000 parts per million. And you remember at 12,800 parts per million, you risk death within 1 to 3 minutes. Another common source of CO are all of those backdrafting appliances that we have in our house. So not only is it the furnace or the boiler, it could be the water heater, it could be the gas oven, it could be the dryer. Anything that is fuel fired within that house could create CO if not drafted properly. And it's important. I recently read a story about somebody who had went into a customer's house and a contractor had red tagged the furnace. But it turns out the furnace was actually working completely fine. It was a faulty gas oven that was pumping all of that CO into the house. So it's important to identify what the correct source of CO is, because those homeowners could have been very well, or they were very well in danger because the correct source wasn't identified. It's also a good reminder anytime that you're running your oven or your stove, make sure that you turn on that exhaust fan, because ovens aren't direct vented. So we want to make sure that we are venting it out into the ambient air. And then the third most common reason that home CO alarms go off happen to be cracked heat exchangers. Now, cracked heat exchangers are a very real thing, but they only account for about less than 10% of the reason home CO alarms go off. And cracked heat exchangers, by the way, we'll talk about this a little bit further into the presentation. There is a way to do a heat exchanger integrity test with your combustion analyzer. And again, carbon monoxide is tasteless, it is colorless, and it is odorless, but there are some signs that can manifest within the furnace room or the boiler room, mechanical room, whatever you may be in. So if you see a lot of soot, that's a good indication that things aren't burning properly, and you could have CO seeping back into the environment. As well as if you open that door and you notice that dust deposits are around it. It doesn't mean that the homeowner isn't doing their job and cleaning their house. It's again an indication that that room is under pressure and things may not be venting properly. And then the very last thing is if we see flue pipes that have any visual openings or any rusting, again, that could be a leak point for any of that carbon monoxide to run into the living space or building. So with all of that, let's start talking a little bit more about actual combustion. So we're going to take a little look at theoretical versus ideal combustion. And hopefully everybody out there has seen the combustion triangle. The combustion triangle tells us that we need three things for combustion to happen. We need to have oxygen, we need to have a fuel source, and we have to have an ignition point. And when those three things combine, we wind up with a lot of molecules. So if we look at the upper left-hand side, we can see what complete combustion looks like. And we can see that all of those molecules, they come over and they're very nice and neat and tidy in the production of what's coming out. But when we go to the bottom right-hand side, we can see that suddenly CO happens. And because we can't have 100% complete combustion, we wind up with CO as a byproduct of that process. So another way to look at that and to just kind of break it down is to take a look at the combustion scale. The combustion scale. So if we lived in a perfect world, we wouldn't have that byproduct of the carbon monoxide that would happen. But since we probably can all agree that we don't live in the perfect world, the best that we can shoot for is in an ideal world. And in an ideal world, we're going to wind up with very low levels of CO being produced. We're going to be winding up with higher levels of CO2 being produced and lower levels of oxygen in those flue gas mixes. And since we don't live in the perfect world, we shoot for the ideal world, there are two different realities that can happen. That first idea is that we could wind up in an air-rich situation. And an air-rich situation is exactly what you think. There's too much oxygen and not enough fuel being burned. And when we wind up with that, we wind up wasting a lot of fuel. And fuel wasted is money wasted. And I don't know about anybody out there, but I don't really like wasting money if it's preventable. So that's what can happen in the air-rich. And we can see that our combustion gases change a little bit. We wind up with higher levels of CO. Our CO2 levels are going to drop, but our oxygen levels go up way high. On the converse side, though, we could wind up in a situation that is fuel-rich. And fuel-rich, again, is exactly what you think it is. It's too much fuel and not enough oxygen being burnt. And when that happens, one, we wind up with some really dirty equipment. And it doesn't take a whole lot of sooting on equipment to ruin that efficiency. The other thing, though, that we might notice is that our levels of CO go up quite considerably. And if we have anything that is, say, not drafting properly, or there are some holes in that flue piping, we could wind up with all of that excess carbon monoxide running into the living space. So we want to avoid that. So let's get into a little bit of the actual testing. So there's a few reasons why it is important to do a combustion test. The first reason has to do with managing fuel cost. We all agreed just a little bit ago that we don't like wasting money, and neither do our customers. So we want to manage those costs. We also want to manage any of the flue gases that are going into the outside air, because we know that CO, CO2, and NOx can all contribute to pollution. The third reason is with your combustion analyzer, we also want to minimize the risk of CO poisoning, not only to the homeowner and the business owner, but also to you. But there's a fourth reason that's not on this list that I want you to explore. And I want you to think about it, but how many of you out there watching this video today got into the HVAC world because you wanted to be a salesperson? And I'm going to guess very few, if no hands, have gone up while watching this presentation. But when you have a combustion analyzer, your combustion analyzer is actually a sales tool to help you, because it allows you to do reporting. It allows you to change the topic of conversation when you are talking to a homeowner. For example, if you were to go in and do your combustion analysis and you were able to show results to the homeowner, it changes the tone of your conversation. Rather than saying things like, I think you need to do something, you can say, I know you need to do something, and here are the results. The other thing that I urge you is, how many times have you gone out there and you've been the second opinion on a job? And when you're the second opinion and company A has come in, they've told Mrs. Jones, hey, you need a new furnace, and I think this is why. And you come in and you've done all of your professionally tested tests. You've done all of your professional testing. You're going to be able to not only show results, you're going to have a different conversation. You're going to be able to say, here's where the results are. Here's everything I've done. And here's why you need to do that. And that will allow you to have that conversation. And which contractor do you think the customer is going to go with? Contractor A that has said things like, I think, or contractor B that has said, I know, and been able to produce reports for them. There's a variety of things that you can test with your combustion analyzer. So while we're mainly focused on our 80 and 90% furnaces, depending on the capabilities of your analyzers, you may be also able to test things like the draft pressure. You can test things like the gas pressure, and in some cases, even things like static pressure. And it's not just relegated to the furnace world. You can do it. You can test boilers to test their combustion. You can also test water heaters and the high efficiency water heaters. And just so you know, you can go grab any of these graphics if you go to the ueitest.com website and download any of our combustion analyzer manuals. Not only will you see all of these graphics, there's a variety of other graphics that you'll be able to look at as well. Starting up your combustion analyzer properly is almost as equally as important as doing that combustion test. So the number one thing that you want to do with your combustion analyzer is that you want to start it up outside in the ambient air. And our combustion analyzer takes about 60 seconds for that to happen. So turn it on outside in the ambient air. Make sure we're not doing it over any running tailpipes, because we established earlier that tailpipes put out a lot of emissions. So make sure that you turn it on, let it go through its 60-second purge. And once you've gone through that 60-second purge, you're going to want to start attaching what we call the flue probe. And our particular flue probe has a couple of different attachments at the end of it. The first thing that we're going to want to look at is we are going to want to put that inlet tube into the water trap. And that water trap save is very important, that not only do we make a nice secure connection to that, we want to make sure that that inlet tube isn't wobbly or anything like that. We also want to flip over our combustion analyzer and make sure that that drain plug is securely attached. We want to make sure that it hasn't fallen out or we haven't put it in as we go. And once we are doing that, we are good to start attaching the thermocouple. And the thermocouple is the green wire that you'll see there. And that thermocouple, it's important that make sure that we are putting that in the T1 port. And it's easy to remember on our analyzers which one is the T1 port, because that is going to be the port that is closest to the water trap for you. The other thing, though, is that we want to make sure when we're inserting that thermocouple that we are paying attention to the polarity. So it should be pretty easy to see. There's the wider prong and the narrower prong matches up at the bottom of the analyzer for you. But I have seen it on occasion where somehow somebody has been able to reverse that polarity. And by the way, this is also good housekeeping for your meters or anything that has a K-type thermocouple. You will know that you have reversed the polarity because either you're going to get no reading or dashes along the screen when you are seeing your temperature. The other thing is if you put your flue probe into a hot stack and you know that temperature should be going up, but instead you see that temperature going down, that's another good indication that you have reversed the polarity on your thermocouple. The next important step is making sure that your analyzer is set to the correct gas. Because natural gas, propane, heating fuel, those all have different burning qualities, and your analyzer is doing some calculations within itself. So if you don't have the right gas set, it is highly possible that you will get errant readings on your analyzer. Our analyzers come with a lot of preset gases in there for you. So all you'll have to do is go to your status menu, you'll hit an enter key, and then you'll be able to scroll through all of those pre-programmed fuels for you. So once we've set up the gas, now we can move on to our actual combustion testing. If you are working on equipment that has never had combustion testing before, it is possible that you might have to drill a hole into the flue. If you're doing a new install, there are really cool combustion tees that you can buy and put in line so you can set future you up for your combustion testing. But once we've gotten that in place, and we only have to drill about a 1/4 inch, maybe 3 inches, 3/8 of an inch hole, we're pretty much ready to do our combustion testing. Now, there are a few things that we want to make sure of when we're doing our combustion testing, and we're actually going to watch a short video about combustion testing that'll show you some of the critical things that we're going to be looking at. And here we have a short video that will show the ins and outs of doing a proper combustion analysis. So there are 2 different ways, actually 3 different ways that you can view your results. Not only are you going to be able to view your results on your actual analyzer, all of our combustion analyzers have an optional infrared, all of our combustion analyzers interface with an IR printer that you can purchase, as well as when you move into our C163 and C165 Plus models, they also have a free app that you can download and be able to email out any of your results. As we're looking at our results, and by the way, I'm going to speak in a lot of industry rule of thumbs, but when we are looking at our results, the general rule of thumb is if it is under 100 parts per million in the flue, you are safe. For most of our high efficiency appliances, we're generally going to see results that are going to be 50 parts per million or less. And in some cases, because of how the filtering works on your analyzer and the efficiency of the units, you may even see numbers that are very near to 0. We always recommend that you look at your original equipment manufacturer and what their specs are, because again, we're only speaking in general rules of thumb here. When we're looking at CO2, CO2 is very important, especially when we are working in the boiler world. In the boiler world, most manufacturers actually have you do your setup based on your CO2 levels. And it is highly possible when you look at a lot of the equipment manufacturers that they may say things like you can have up to 150 parts per million in the CO. Another important factor that we're going to be looking at is that we're going to be looking at temperature. So if we have a stack that is burning too hot or too cool, we're not going to be maximizing the efficiency for our equipment. And I've mentioned efficiency multiple times during this presentation. And I also want to make the distinction, though, when we're talking about combustion efficiency, we are talking about very much a snapshot in time. So it is possible that your combustion efficiency is not the same as the AFUE, because the AFUE is your annual fuel usage efficiency. And that's done over a very long period of time in very nice conditions. And we know that we are working in the real world. So if your AFUE and your combustion efficiency don't exactly match, that's okay. We don't want to go chasing that efficiency if it means that we are taking that unit outside of what the manufacturer specs say it can be. Because again, if we wind up having it with too much gas and we wind up with it burning too hot, we could risk cracking a heat exchanger. We could be putting in a lot of excess carbon monoxide into a living space. Your combustion analyzer should also be able to provide you a variety of reports. So those reports can range from your basic combustion, which is going to show you 10 different metrics that were measured during that combustion test. Another report that your analyzer can do is the fact that it has what we call an auxiliary screen. And that auxiliary screen is a customizable screen that allows you to print out the 6 most and also view the 6 most important metrics to you. So if you know that you always are going to be wanting to look at your CO, your efficiency, stack temperature, and know what gases you're testing on, you can pre-program that as one screen, and that can be the report that you always attach to whatever job you're working on. Also, depending on the model you have, you could have another screen that will show you temperatures and pressures. And that's great, especially if you had to call a manufacturer. And one of the first questions they're going to ask you is, what is your gas pressure? And now you can actually have documentation of that. And the very last report that your combustion analyzer can provide for you on our combustion analyzers is a heat exchanger integrity test. Now, I mentioned that there was a way to test heat exchangers. And let's take just a quick look at how that works. So, how a combustion heat exchanger test works is you're going to turn your analyzer to the heat exchanger test. It's going to make you verify the gas that you are testing on. And then it's a 2-part test. It's going to take a reading before the blower kicks on. And when the blower kicks on, you'll hit the enter button on your combustion analyzer. And then your analyzer is going to have a 60-second countdown. At the end of that 60 seconds, your analyzer is going to populate the differentials of 3 different metrics. If there is no crack in the heat exchanger, we would expect our oxygen, our CO, and our excess air levels to remain consistent. However, if there is a breach in that heat exchanger, we might start noticing some differences between the CO, the oxygen, and the excess air. And I want to say that no test is 100% conclusive. So this is just another tool in your tool bag that will allow you to know if you have a crack in the heat exchanger and further investigation is warranted. And here we can take a look at our generally accepted results. And by the way, these are also free to download. If you go to the ueitest.com website, you can download all of the generally accepted results. And again, I'm speaking in generally accepted results. Always defer to the original equipment manufacturer. When we take a look at the generally accepted results, and for most of the things that we are testing, we're going to be looking at those 2 far right columns. And when we start looking at that, we're going to notice that where the oxygen set points should be are going to vary a little bit. Our CO2 levels are going to be fairly consistent, but one of the biggest things that we'll notice is that we'll notice that there is a difference in the temperature in that flue. So when we're talking about the 80 percenters of the world, we can see where our levels get up to maybe about 400 degrees. But when we're working with those high efficiency units, you can see that it can max out at 125 degrees. The other thing that is important to note difference wise between the 80% and the high efficiency is the fact that our draft pressure is going to change. We go from having a negative draft pressure on the 80 percenters to having a positive draft pressure on our high efficiency units. And there's some good reminders with your combustion analyzer. So one of them is always make sure that we're purging it outside in the fresh air. If you happen to be working on an oil unit, and by the way, we do also offer oil kits so you can get the smoke pump with your combustion analyzer as well. We want to make sure that we're doing that smoke pump test first, because oil can be dirty and it can be nasty and it can gum up your analyzer pretty quickly. So it's important to do that smoke pump test first. That when we take our flue probe out of the flue, don't immediately go grabbing the end of that. It could be very, very hot, and we don't want to wind up with anybody with burns on their hands. We also want to make sure that we're letting it cool down before we put it into the case or the bag that we're carrying it in. We want to make sure that if any condensate did get into that water trap while you were doing your testing, that we are draining any of that condensate. We don't want that just sitting in your analyzer. It could run back into your analyzer if you happen to have forgotten. And this is the next key point. Don't leave your analyzer. This applies not only to your combustion analyzer, it applies to your manometers as well as meters. Anything that has an electronics board on it, you don't want to leave in extreme temperatures because they have electronics in them. We want to make sure that we don't leave them outside. So my rule of thumb, if you wouldn't leave your cell phone outside in your car overnight, don't leave the test instruments that are going to make you money in your vehicle overnight. And if for some reason you did happen to do that and you left it overnight, please, please, please make sure that you're allowing it to warm up to room temperature before using any of your products. That's very important. So now that we've covered the dangers of carbon monoxide and how to do a combustion analysis, let's take a moment to look at the tools that UEI Test Instruments offers to help make your job easier. Earlier this year, we debuted a few new products. One of the new products that we debuted is a carbon monoxide analyzer. This carbon monoxide analyzer is simply just to help you read any of the CO levels that may be present not only in the ambient air, but in the stack as well. What's really nice about the COA is that the COA actually interfaces with portable carbon monoxide detectors that we have called the COL. And this analyzer will allow you to get the results for up to 4 of these simultaneously. And these COLs are actually a leave behind CO logger that allows you to record for up to 2 weeks or about 20,000 samples. We also debuted our CEA, which is our combustion efficiency tester. Our combustion efficiency tester is great for doing quick checks, such as just looking at what our CO2 levels are, or if we want to just see what the efficiency of an appliance is. And if you're not ready to dive into that full combustion analysis, but you would like a way to be able to test heat exchangers, we also offer our HET, which is a heat exchanger integrity tester that simply is going to help you measure your CO, your O2, and it's going to calculate out your CO2 and your excess air. Now, for those of you who are ready to do that full-on combustion analysis, we offer our C161. And what I want to talk about is a little bit of these core features that make the C161 And these core features also transfer to our higher products. So we'll take a little look at what that comparison looks like. But all of our combustion analyzers have a nice 6-line display, so it's going to make you be able to see all of your info on that one screen. We also heard that you like having a dial rather than having to fumble through a bunch of menus with a touch screen. So we have a multimeter style dial that allows you to set it to the readings that you want to be able to read, and you're going to view your results. Another important feature that is key across all of our line is the fact that we offer a NOx filtered CO sensor. NOx, when we're doing combustion, can mimic CO in CO sensors. So by having a NOx filtered CO sensor, you're going to get a more accurate read of your CO. Another core feature that is across our line is the fact that they all do have that heat exchanger integrity test built into them. And one of the newest additions that we've now put on all of our combustion analyzers is the fact that they have a CO overrange pump. And that pump works, it's a 2-part pump. So when your analyzer sees high levels of CO, it actually shuts off that main pump and a secondary pump kicks on to help purge it out. And while I'm based here in Indiana, so I don't have to worry a whole lot about the high altitude compensation, our analyzers are programmed so whether you are working at sea level or 10,000, 14,000, 16,000 feet above sea level, your analyzer will automatically compensate for that altitude with no additional things needing to be done. And the very last thing all of our analyzers include is the fact that it has a water trap indicator light. So whenever the pump on your combustion analyzer is on, there's a light that is going to flash, and it helps illuminate where your water trap level is and provides as a way of reminding you to empty out your water trap had any condensate gotten in there. When you move to our C163, because our C161 only comes, it's an analyzer, it's a probe, and a box. When you move to our C163 model, you add this nice red hard case that you see here. You now also have the option that you have differential pressure built into your combustion analyzer, which is perfect. So whether we're wanting to test draft pressure, static pressure, or gas pressure, your combustion analyzer will be able to take those results. In addition to that, this is the first model that introduces the wireless printing app. And that wireless printing app allows you to view your results and email them directly from your smart device. And our C165 Plus that you see here not only has all of those core features on the C161, it includes the hard case, it adds an additional test. It adds a room CO test, which is a 30-minute test that takes a sample of the ambient air every 2 minutes. So at the end of that test, you're going to be able to see 15 different results. And hopefully your CO levels during all of that time remain at 0. But it's a nice way and a nice report to be able to give to a homeowner. The C165 Plus, though, also comes with a higher CO sensor. So it can handle more parts per million. And that CO sensor is also hydrogen compensated. Because it turns out that, again, hydrogen can also mimic CO in CO sensors. So by being able to have not only a NOx filtered CO sensor, you're going to have a hydrogen compensated to give you the most accurate results. And finally, it includes 2 wireless pipe clamps. And these are great, especially when you're working on boilers and you need to know those flow and return temperatures, that you can interface it with our Cane Link system. And that Cane Link system allows you to see those results directly on your combustion analyzer. And in 2024, we actually debuted our Cane 460. And that Cane 460, for the record, was a gold medal dealer design award winner for us. And what's really neat about the Cane 460 is not only does it come as your combustion analyzer, so if you notice, it's a little bit more robust. You might have seen that our combustion analyzers, for the most part, that lineup looked very similar. The Cane 460 introduces a slightly bigger housing, but still very manageable to hold in your hands, but it allows you to see more metrics along your screen. The Cane 460 also works with that Cane Link system, and that Cane Link system allows us to interface more of our tools within the analyzer. So not only can the Cane 460 work as your combustion analyzer, you're able to interface it with a variety of our other products, such as our Hub series. We offer wireless gauge sets, which traditionally have required you to have a smartphone to be able to see your results. This will now interface with your Cane 460 and act as your display. In addition to being able to use our Hub series, you can also interface it with those leave behind COL, those carbon monoxide detectors that I was talking about. In addition, you can also interface it with our DTH2, which is a small digital temperature humidity anemometer. So now we can also see airflow going on. And not only will your analyzer show you your results, you can use it with that optional infrared printer that we offer, as well as there is a free app that you can go and be able to see your results not only on your Apple or Android device, but it also interfaces with a PC app as well. The next important thing, though, is that it's great. There's a lot of analyzers to hit all of those price points for you. But there is also a secondary component when we are talking about combustion analyzers. And for the record, it's not just me, it's not just UEI telling you this, but every combustion analyzer should be sent in for yearly recertification. And traditionally, that has been kind of a pain. So UEI, we came out with a program that is designed for you in mind, and this is UEI Service Plus Guaranteed. So go buy your combustion analyzer. I recommend going to our website, go ahead and register it, upload your proof of purchase. And then it just makes it easier because we'll send you little reminders when it's time to send in your combustion analyzer. But this was also a Dealer Design Award winner for us in 2024. And the way that this program works is that every year you send in your combustion analyzer, we give you another year warranty on that. So your analyzer comes with a 1-year warranty. Send it in during that first year. We're going to give you another year warranty, and so on and so forth. And we will do that for up to 10 years from your date of purchase. In addition to that, we have an ISO certified lab here in Indianapolis, Indiana, that offers same-day recertification. So when you send in your combustion analyzer and it lands in our Indianapolis facility on Wednesday morning, it goes back out on that UPS truck Wednesday afternoon. So that turnaround time is extremely quick for you. In addition to that, because not only are you going, in addition to that, we also offer when you use our UEI Service Plus Guaranteed program. And if we fail, by the way, to get your combustion analyzer out to you or back on that, if we fail to get your analyzer and it's come in for its standard recertification and recalibration on the same day that we receive it, you don't pay for your yearly recertification that year. And that is UEI Service Plus Guaranteed. I appreciate your time today as we went through the dangers of CO, how to do a combustion analysis, and the tools that you can use to test it. If you have any other questions, feel free, reach out to our friends here at Jackson Systems. You can visit their website or give them a call, and they'll be happy to help you with any of the questions. And you're also welcome to reach out to us. As I mentioned, we have our website that you can use, ueitest.com. And if you call us, they'll also be able to redirect you to me as well. Well, thank you for joining us on the differences of all of the UEI combustion analyzers. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to your specialists at Jackson Systems. And thanks for watching.